University.
Surf City, USA. Huntington Beach, California. It's the American dream. Year-round, perfect weather. Sunny, 72 degrees. Its beaches. Ocean breeze. Surf contests. An annual air show. Its iconic pier. Clean communities. Plenty of parks. Great schools. Home values that have increased 30-fold in the last 50 years. That's the Huntington Beach we know and love, and why many have remained longtime residents of this paradise, remote from many of the problems that plague other cities in our state and in our country. Despite its appearances, there is something terribly wrong going on in Huntington Beach today. The health and well-being of those living in Southeast Huntington Beach has been threatened for some time.
Problems I had have been basically in the chest with a lot of mucus.
Severe headaches.
Sharp pains.
Consistent blowing of one's nose.
Some congestion at night.
Pneumonia.
Some coughing.
Bruising.
My balance has been affected.
Loss of balance. Sunken eyes.
A kind of unprecedented level of irritation in my chest.
Coughing. All sorts of really negative things.
The current health crisis affecting Southeast Huntington Beach begins with its history. Before homes started to appear in what was once the fastest growing city in America. Underneath and beside its many housing tracts are the remnants of its past. Huntington Beach was incorporated in 1909. Originally owned and developed by the railroad magnate Henry Huntington, the sleepy town first gained momentum as an oil town in the 1920s. After nearly 30 years of prolific oil production, the oil rigs began to disappear in the 1950s. With the baby boom, post-World War II economy, and urban expansion, homes were built on top of where there were once hundreds of oil rigs. And as with all production, there is waste. Southeast Huntington Beach once had an airport. At the end of the northeast runway, there was a section used as an oil sump by the oil companies. Later, in the 1970s and early 80s, the site then was used for construction waste. This section, located on the corner of Hamilton Avenue and Magnolia Street, is known as the ASCON Landfill. Unlike the rest of the immediate area, this is one section of Southeast Huntington Beach that has not been developed for obvious reasons.
Have witnessed and have seen how the ASCON dump site has been increased, dating back to trucks going up the hill into the lagoons.
I think 1938 to 1984, ASCON served as an area for dumping oil residue, oil waste, construction material, including asbestos.
The gate at the opening on Magnolia was open all the time. There was no lock, there was no key, let alone even a inspector. The trucks just rolled in and the trucks rolled out empty. We've seen asphalt, we've seen construction equipment, we've seen caustic chemicals, we've seen a lot of unknown chemicals just dumped all over in the various lagoons.
Despite a post-Second World War suburban build-out that took place through so much of California, that oil doesn't necessarily go away, nor, for that matter, the residue or what happened to the oil, were it, in the case of ASCON, to have been, purposefully, tactically dumped into a ground area of like about 38 acres by various oil companies over a period of almost 5 decades.
The ASCON landfill was left alone for many years, and for a good reason.
I have a long history of knowledge regarding ASCON because I grew up with it. But when I moved as an adult with my family to our current residence in '92, being told as a homeowner that I was moving next to a landfill. I didn't think very much of it. Growing up next to the high school, smelled the smell, everybody knew to stay away from that area. So I didn't have much that I was worried about.
Our family home is just within sight of the AES power plant, so the ASCON toxic waste dump is probably not more than a half a mile away from my home.
You know, all this time, really, I semi-joke to friends and family that right kitty corner across the street from my high school, there was this toxic dump that had been placed there in the late 30s.
I've been here since 1978, but I knew there was maybe a dump there, but I didn't realize it was a toxic waste dump.
After 35 years of being left alone, cleanup efforts began on the ASCON landfill in the spring of 2019.
I knew that was a landfill, but I didn't know it was a superfund landfill, and I didn't know they were remediating it. I saw digging over there. I saw tractors and excavators. I just assumed they were moving dirt, maybe putting up a development. It's not that uncommon.
After I moved back to take care of my elderly mother in the neighborhood, in the family home, there's this toxic waste dump, and they're excavating all these tons of dirt. And I'm hearing about people getting cancer, people having respiratory illness.
One day, it was a Wednesday, it was early spring, I smelled something as I was walking my animals, and I remember getting out of the car in the cul-de-sac, Stillwell Circle, where people park sometimes to use the Edison Community Center Park. And I smelled this horrible smell, and immediately I went, wow, that stinks. And I looked up and I noticed they were doing some excavating at the ASCON site.
About 10 months ago, early April of 2019, I started having very sharp pains, a kind of unprecedented level of irritation in my chest. I went into a walk-in clinic, a prompt care, and got all the checkups that they do, and presumed that it was just a return of an aggressive asthma.
I have 3 beautiful children. I had a daughter who was experiencing severe headaches, sunken eyes, bruising, coughing.
Friends through social media let me know that there was a blatant cleanup effort taking place at the ASCON landfill, and my jaw dropped.
I ended up calling the numbers on the ASCON fence line, which was Department of Toxic Substances, and ASCON itself. They had a hotline. So I called and left 2 messages saying that there's a bad odor, it's a debilitating odor, I think something's wrong, could somebody call me back, tell me what's in the air. I didn't get a call back until maybe 36 hours later. And I remember being told from one of the agencies that, I'm sorry, there's only 1 phone call and you're it, so we really don't take action, but your call has been noted.
I had a former mayor and classmate of mine from my youth just bluntly off the record tell me years ago that, quote, "Pi, they don't even know how to clean it," end quote.
My oldest child was experiencing rashes on his skin, headaches, sinus issues. My baby, who was 3 at the time, was the most concerning in the house. He became, they don't know why, but he was symptomatic like a severe asthmatic, to the point where he would have 100% blockage of his airways, and we were forced to call 911 on many occasions for him. I'm sorry, this is so hard as a mother. As I said to ASCON, I don't think any mother should ever have to hold their child while they turn blue, because they can't breathe, and we had no explanations. I have worked in respiratory medicine and research for many, many, many years previously, and I went straight to a very world-renowned respiratory expert with my child, and he tested him extensively, and he had no known allergens, no known triggers to have these symptoms, and I had no answers, but we were spending nights at Chalk Hospital with our child who couldn't breathe, and we don't know why.
I'm having coffee. with my husband inside of our home. All doors and windows are closed. And I look across, it's probably 7:30 in the morning. I'll never forget it. And I look across at him and I said, "You smell that?" It smelled like a shower pan being put in your home. If you've ever had that, it's a tarry smell. It's really, really a strong kind of instant headache, just a reaction. You have a visceral reaction to the smell. And I did, and I said, "There has to be a window open. That's the smell I smelled at the park yesterday." So again, I got on my phone and I actually texted about 8 of my neighbors and said, "Do you guys smell that smell?" And they said, "Yes, close your windows, close your doors." Well, I had the 2 numbers for ASCON's hotline and the DTSC, and then I even had the cut smog, which is AQMD's number. So I texted my neighbors all those. We all called. It was that day that we actually got responses from AQMD where people came out to our home, and that's how it began.
Randomly, I received a flyer on my doorstep that had a list of symptoms that said, "Are you or your family experiencing these symptoms? It may be a result of exposure to toxins found at the ASCON Landfill." I decided to call the number on the flyer and talk to the people that had passed it out and just ask questions.
That smell lingered for weeks. And in that time, I started a log of calls to AQMD. Every time they would send somebody out, I had to be present at my home. I would call the other agencies. I would call City Hall. I went to City Council meetings. I said to them, "We have a problem. It's really bad. It never goes away. They stopped working, but the smell is still there." And I pretty much was poo-pooed, and like the crazy lady in Southeast, she's got nothing better to do than to complain. Every day they started bulldozing more. That smell got stronger. The wind became an issue. Suddenly, as it always is in Southeast Huntington Beach in the spring, the winds would pick up. Around 11 or 12, they'd pick up. And you could feasibly have between 12 to 15 to 18 to 20 mile per hour winds at any given time, on any day, and every day. I remember this feeling of panic in my heart, thinking, we're having a chemical emergency. I ran over in my car to Edison High School, where I'm a graduate, where my kids graduated, and I went to the front office and I said, "Do you guys smell that?" And they all said, "Yeah, I think it's a burp from the ocean. That's what we were told." And I'm like, "No, that's the landfill they're working on." And they said, "Oh, well, we didn't know that." And I said, "Here are the numbers that are on their fences. Please give them to the parents. Please call them, because it can't be good."
I started to piece together that more than likely I had been exposed, as many others had been, to what they were basically doing there. So I started getting active like late May, early June, pretty immediately after I found out that there was a remediation taking place. I met others within the community I had not known, who were either also experiencing disturbing symptoms like myself, or just out of sheer shock because of just the contrast between this very halcyon-like beachside, all-Americana picket fence environment and the blunt reality that most, if not all, of Huntington Beach itself, many decades ago, was all essentially just oil development.
I remember being at the high school, or being, again, just outside and feeling like I couldn't open my doors and windows. And then I started getting angry. I thought, I pay a lot of money to live in my home. I am literally a quarter mile from the ocean, and I can't open my doors and windows because no one can tell me what I'm breathing and if it's safe.
A couple of weeks later, because of my education in biochemistry and cell biology, I was contacted by some of the leaders of a grassroots environmental activist group. They asked if I would come and meet with the director of DTSC and the field scientist from DTSC for ASCON, and at the time, the acting director of California EPA, and just listen, so that while they asked questions about ASCON, because they were very educated and I wasn't on the landfill, if I could pick up on anything about exposure, and that seemed off. And almost immediately, I found that they were given false information.
Finally, after a month, I flat out said, you have an option. You can ask them to stop digging. You gave them a conditional use permit. You can easily say, you are out of your parameters. There's this much, it's an unhealthy situation that you didn't predict, and we can stop this. We can figure a better way. Well, got a little resistance there, and was told that, they're under the legal limits and they're following the rules, and there's legally no way to stop that. Well, now we got sick. Now my family's starting to get sick. Now I have a couple of my neighbors got pneumonia. Everybody I'm talking to in my neighborhood is all saying, do your eyes burn? Like, do you smell that? Can you taste that? Like, I could taste it in my backyard. I go out and take the trash out at night, and just you could taste in the air. I have people visit me from other parts of the city and say, it just smells different in your front yard as we're sitting out front. And I thought, this is wrong. Something's wrong. We need to stop this. But how?
Disturbing the layers of toxic chemicals underneath promotes a great hazard to the community at large.
For any community to be able to, have a proximity to that, let alone have a public high school, a public rec center, thousands of tract homes built adjacent to it, just begs the question over, who was out to lunch 50 plus years ago as far as urban planning, civic planning, was concerned. I mean, what geniuses are sitting there going, okay, you see that toxic landfill there that was used for God knows what for so many years? I've got a bright idea. Let's build a public high school right across the street, a park where kids are playing their sports, and then let's just develop the heck out of it with what promises to be fairly expensive homes.
To my knowledge, and what I have assessed and analyzed in the documents that have been provided to the public, I have seen a 97-ish page document that explains what's in Pit F. So that's a lot of VOCs, semi-VOCs, metals, including different toxins that will cause cancer.
There's still a big pit that is covered by a tent called Pit F that they're still trying to open up. Now that pit is styrene, is a liquid styrene pit, and I started to read about it, and it's had contamination a mile in diameter, meaning it has affected a large portion of ground, and it has the visible tarry, sticky, nasty chemical compounds still right there, easy to see, and their tests have shown it's a dangerous, dangerous pit. It's so dangerous that I was told that the reason they covered it was to contain the VOCs, and these are cancer-causing chemicals. So they also have a neurological component, meaning if you breathe them for long enough, you could have neurological symptoms, which sound like loss of balance, being confused, all sorts of really negative things. And as I read about styrene in laboratory rats, they die after 4 to 6 hours of exposure.
What the landowners and corporations did not consider was the deep history within the ASCON landfill and what needs to be done in order to clean that landfill safely.
It has been recently that a group of mothers have come together and have put up the fight because of, number one, the sickness of their children, the high degree of cancer in this neighborhood within a 5-mile radius.
We had a few great winters of heavy rains that took care of our state drought and regional drought. Downside of that was that the ASCON landfill overflowed routinely into the streets. Heavy winds would blow its material onto homes, onto rooftops, destroying paint jobs on cars, killing plants and pets and getting people sick. So that also presumably forced the city's hand in order to do something, because it was no longer able to ignore the fact that there's these homes built right next to a toxic landfill.
The DTSC people brings in a consultant, and he takes in the whole LA County geographical area and uses that as his standard deviation. We said, no, we want to know within the parameters of 5 miles what has caused these people to die. Of course, does anyone care? No. We had a Huntington Beach city councilman, went before the grand jury in Orange County, and he was asked, what do the residents say? Did the Orange County grand jury come and talk to the people of the residents? No.
One day, I thought, I'm going to take a video of what they're doing, because they were working so close to the street, so close to people on bikes and joggers and the high school and the community center, and I thought, I'm just going to take a picture of this and put it on Facebook and see what the rest of the city thinks. And I did that, and I got a huge reaction. And one person in particular reached out to me and said, I just drove through that. I had to roll my windows up. What is that? And I said, I don't know, but I need help because I can't read all these documents and I can't attend city council meetings solo. We need to form some sort of a community, group so that we can convey this message to the powers that be, or nothing's gonna change. Well, she agreed. So a Facebook page was made, and it was more of an awareness page. And that helped, because a lot of people kept saying, I'm sick too. My daughter's been sick.
We're treated as peasants. You have to remember that Southeast Huntington Beach is disenfranchised. We have no vote, we have no representation, and we have no one that will stand up for Southeast Huntington Beach.
Someone at DTSC, through the city, through social media, catches wind of it and reaches out and says, we need to meet. I want to come down and see. And I said, perfect. Why don't you come over to my house for lunch? Well, in my house, my side door opens and you see the tent. It's just beautiful. It's poetic almost. So we sat down. He sat down. I said, do you mind if I open the side door? It's warm today for a little fresh air. He said, sure. And then he looked and I said, yeah, I'm 80 Google feet from pit F. And the remediation as it stands right now is so broken and bad because you can smell it, you can see it, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out if people are sick, people are complaining, and there's this many of them, we probably need to go back to the drawing board, no matter what the cost, because we're talking about human lives. And he agreed.
The DTSC is more or less given a green light of the remediation process, claiming that it's more or less an innocuous, safe process that's being taken, and experts are claiming that the air samples resulting from the remediation, soil, the air, the water, everything is clear, everything is safe, despite people conspicuously complaining of respiratory and pulmonary symptoms, headaches, many people taking their children out of adjacent schools, either transferring them outright or keeping them away until the remediation died or was indefinitely suspended.
To my knowledge, I was told by a member of DTSC that the workers had experienced exposure symptoms as well, and several had left the job because of those symptoms. We see that the workers are walking around unprotected, no masks, no protective outer clothing. Sometimes they don't even have hard hats on. And I find that very concerning that they would breathe in dust and chemicals on that site and not be offered any protection. And to my knowledge, they have not been warned that there's a danger to them in their work environment.
As a result of the local community addressing the issues with City Council, there was an agreement to stop all digging until the end of the school year in June 2019.
There's been a young cadre of young women with children who have taken up the battle, who have taken up the fight. These people actually bring their children to testify, and they look at the city council and say, can you guarantee that my child will not have a pulmonary disease in 5 years, 10 years?
The means by which they've gone about remediating contradict past guidance given by state regulators themselves even with regard to how to remediate, if ever, due to the toxicity levels.
On June 6th, the City of Huntington Beach hosted a community town hall.
And this gentleman was from the Department of Toxic Substances. He was their director in charge. He sat down, our mayor, finally, someone from City Hall, the only one who gave me any response was our mayor. He ended up coming and directing this meeting that lasted for hours, and it was an angry mob, and it was exactly what we needed.
I put together 9 demands with some colleagues from the Huntington Beach Landfill Awareness Project.
Information is readily found online. Our community did a great job of compiling data in the form of past PDF studies, state-level studies, environmental studies, past lawsuits and whatnot that indicate what's in the landfill, what the toxicity can do to people, what needs to be done should there ever be a consideration of remediation.
I feel very good that we're finally getting to a place where the community, the powers that be, the government agencies involved are all starting to see the same things that the residents have been seeing for months.
The demands we made were all just suggestions of ways that ASCON could do a better job of protecting our community and our environment from future exposure.
And at that time, by the end of the meeting, DTSC stood up and said, quote unquote, this remediation is broken. It will not go on as planned. It will be halted immediately. And these are the 9 conditions that we will do before we go into any sort of future remediation or any continuance. It took a bunch of soccer moms to scream and shout at a high school community meeting to get the safety measures in place. And we're still arguing over, splitting hairs even, over what they're doing versus what they said they would do.
So there's an indefinite closure on the formal remediation process, keyword formal, because residents will nonetheless, despite the June 7th shutdown, see workers on the land, see trucks coming and going. And it's like, what happened to your letter of June 7th?
Since digging began again, problems persist. Frustrated with the inaction and lack of genuine concern from the local government, some residents have looked to other means of taking action, legal action.
Our residents have taken the issue to various law firms and consistently gotten form letters back denying or declining the want to take the case on. We're deducing that it's possibly due to just intimidation on the part of the attorneys who review the detailed cases we give them of people getting ill, of a broken remediation process. These attorneys and their firms may very well just look at who the owners are behind the ASCON landfill, see what Goliaths they are, do their own cost-benefit analyses, and decide to pass.
In the meantime, Southeast Huntington Beach residents continue to suffer as the cleanup continues. The cleanup efforts have been lackluster, lack genuine thought or concern, and continue to threaten the community.
I've asked them, and many of us have asked them, what is the plan if something goes awry? You had an issue on the northeast corner where a chemical plume enveloped the neighborhood and everybody went crazy and 1,000 people went to the high school and pitchforks were stomped and you stopped and said, you're right, it's broken. How do I get to sleep at night if you open up this pit F? How do I know if something went wrong? It's crickets.
Also, the wind and the air is monitored at different locations throughout the community. And though there hasn't been elevated VOC readings off-site at the trailers post the remediation being halted, we don't know what those values looked like prior to the remediation being halted.
Despite local residents using the powers they have of their voice in town hall meetings and the legal community's unwillingness to help, the problem persists, with no recourse to the owners or developers of the ASCON landfill.
What we want in Southeast Huntington Beach, we just want to know the truth.
We've owned our home for 18 years. This is where my children live, play, participate in their life. And so it's not that easy just to pick up, sell your house, and find a new home in a community that you can afford in Southern California.
These people that own that land have deep pockets, and they can put the locals up in these high-rise hotels for a couple of days or however long it takes to clean this mess up.
My hope is that they will stay true to their word and give our community what we have demanded, which is the best protective measures during the remediation to limit, if not eliminate, all exposure risk to our community.
Maybe even put some solar panels on it to help generate some power that's needed in Orange County and Southern California. Why not?
Local residents of Southeast Huntington Beach benefit from your awareness and need your help. Our country has thousands of superfunds and landfills that are toxic, just like the ASCON Landfill. If it can happen to them, it can happen to you.